In my wildest dreams, I never thought that I would be at a healthy weight again, much less fighting to keep weight on my body. And I'm not even sick. I'd actually resigned myself to the idea that I'd be fat and that my sore joints would eventually be upgraded to some kind of arthritis, and I'd have to stop doing my sports and activities. As it was, on a daily basis, I was sore all the time. My back, my knees, my elbows, my neck, sore all the time. Before I can tell you what changed, I need to tell you why I thought I was doomed. I come from a long line of strong, independent women. And I can remember an occasion when I was in my 20s. I joined a gym and they gave me a free pass. And I decided to take my mom along to see if maybe she'd want to join the gym too. Well, can I tell you that I was shocked when my mom was able to bench press 3 times the amount that I was able to bench press, and she did it easily. My mother, my grandmother, my aunts, all very strong women, like physically strong women, but also women who were prone to weight gain and diabetes. I was certain that my genetics were leading me down that same path. Add to it, I had like these joint issues that I'd had since I was in my early 20s, living in varying degrees of pain all the time. I had 2 paths that I figured I could take. So, path number one is the path down the road that says, be careful with yourself. Stay as quiet as you possibly can so you don't damage anything else, and just try to make it through life without having more pain. Or path number two that said, enjoy life to the fullest, do everything that your body can do until your body can't do anything else because you're in pain anyways. Well, funny enough, if you do what's fun, so if you live your life and use your body as you wish, eventually you stop noticing the pain as much. So from my 20s to my 40s, I basically did whatever activities I wanted. And then I would live 1 or 2 recovery days after the fact to get past the pain. And I was so used to doing that, most people didn't even notice that I was living pain because I stopped showing it. And more importantly, when I stopped showing it, at some point I actually found some way to learn to ignore it. So what does that mean? I still felt it. And if I did certain movements in my recovery days, oof, I would really feel it. But on my recovery days, those were the days where I kind of lived a little bit more quietly, and then eventually I'd get back to life. End of August, beginning of September in 2017, I woke up with a pain in my hip. Enough of a pain that I was limping. The problem was, I hadn't done anything that I could think of. No sports, no falls, nothing that I could pin the blame on for why my hip was feeling so bad. There was nothing to explain why all of a sudden I could barely walk. Now, you could imagine that I was frantic. And initially, I wanted to believe that it was just going to go away by itself. As mysteriously as it had shown up, it would mysteriously just be gone. But instead, it got worse. By the time the first snow fell, a time that I'm normally excited to go snowboarding, I could barely get in and out of my car. And I was having extreme difficulty sitting for any length of time. Now, suffice it to say, I did not get to ski that winter season. And because I was overweight, and honestly, that's how I spoke to myself about it in my head, that I was overweight. But I was carrying 70 extra pounds on my body. So technically, when you look at my BMI, 31.5, I was classified as obese. But we're going to come back to that internal conversation in a little while, because I find it interesting how our mind manages the things that we're saying to ourselves. It's very fascinating. So in my struggle to solve my hip issue, I decided that the extra weight that I was carrying was very likely the cause. And if I could lose like 20 pounds, again, denial, I could probably solve my hip issue. And why did I decide that weight loss was the way to go? Like at this point, I'd been suffering for months with my hip. Why didn't I just go to the doctor and see what the doctor had to say? Because I am afraid of surgery and medication. And with the pain that I was feeling, the only solution that my eyes could see was some kind of medication forever or hip replacement surgery. Neither of those were things that I could fathom allowing into my life. So basically, for me, weight loss seemed like the lesser of the evils. So obviously, because we all know how to lose weight, my first thought was cut out the junk food and get in some exercise. But the problem was I couldn't exercise. Hip was killing me. So I said, cut out the junk food. And every day, no matter how much this hurts, I'm going to go for a walk because I'm used to that. I'm used to just moving through the pain. And that's what I did. For the next, I believe, 3 to 4 months, I walked every day, sometimes twice a day. And I didn't have any junk food, no cookies, chips, chocolate. I cut out chocolate. And by the end of February, I had lost a grand total of 0 pounds. 0 pounds. Your mind protects you. It treats information in different ways dependent on how it's going to impact your emotional health. For me, interestingly, in high school, I did gym class. I didn't have extracurricular sports activities. In CEGEP, I did gym class. I did not have any extracurricular sports activities. In both of those scenarios, I was doing the gym class for anywhere from 2 hours to possibly 3 hours per week. When I got into university, I didn't do any more gym classes. So that's a period of 5 years where I did no gym, I did no extracurriculars. All I did was school. When I finished school, I started working, and maybe 2 years after that, I started looking at sports that I could do to entertain myself. And that's when I started doing my major sports. Yet, somehow, I've convinced myself that my pains in my knees and elbows and all my joints was from sports. How? We avoid painful information. And I didn't want to know that my body was falling apart. So my brain gave me a reason why I had joint pain. It's the same reason that I was able to look in the mirror and occasionally step on a scale and tell myself that I was a little bit overweight. But that lie that I was telling myself allowed me to delay solving the problem until excruciating pain. I took action because my body was not allowing me to ignore the problem anymore. But I will say that I got lucky because I have an aversion to medication and surgery, which I imagine everybody has the aversion to surgery, but I don't like taking medication. So I lived another few months in pain trying to figure out what natural remedy could I do to decrease the pain that I had in my hip. And by looking for that natural remedy, I actually stumbled across the cause of my hip issue. So I found the cause of the problem, the root cause. Are you still with me? Are you seeing what I'm saying? The pain caused me to stop lying to myself. What was your aha moment? When did you have to stop lying to yourself and stop pretending that was just a little bit of weight? I was actually part of the problem because I wasn't letting myself see that I was obese. I wasn't letting myself see that my joint problem was a medical problem. I wasn't letting myself see that I was on the road to diabetes, like every other woman in my family. Because I thought I couldn't change the road that I was on, my brain protected me from that information and blamed it on my sports. I believed that story. And because I believed that story, when things weren't going well in my life, I allowed myself to self-soothe with food. Food's not a problem, right? When there were celebrations, I allowed myself to eat the fun food. Food's not a problem, right? When I was too busy to make a meal, I allowed myself to do takeout because food is not a problem, right? Because I did not know that carbohydrates were causing my problem, I allowed myself to continue to eat high carb foods that were damaging my health. When I realized that the pain wasn't going to go away by itself and that the foods that I was eating were contributing to my pain. Oh, wait a minute. Were you aware that carbohydrates cause inflammation? Yeah, in my research, that was what came to me. Scientifically proven that carbohydrates are part of the repair response of the body, and it's a healthy thing for the body to do. Like when you cut your finger, and then it's sore and it gets kind of swollen up and then it heals itself. That's on purpose, your body healing itself. And then the other thing about what I was doing, I'm eating all these foods that are high in carb to, in my research, learn that eating carbohydrates releases insulin. Insulin, the fat storage hormone, responds to you having eaten carbohydrates by putting energy away as fat. Again, natural response of the body. Supposed to do it. Are you confused yet? Because I was angrily confused. Weight gain and inflammation are two of the problems that most people struggle with on a daily basis. And here it was that I just learned that foods that I was eating caused a natural reaction in my body that obviously led to inflammation. I learned that information at the end of February 2018. And I researched it because I couldn't believe it. But by April 19th, I had convinced myself. This is the truth. It's everywhere. And April 20th, I made the most important decision I ever made for my health. I started a keto diet. And 4 years later, I'm still eating a ketogenic lifestyle. And I get so many questions. How do you do it? How do you manage? Don't you miss fun foods? And the most important one I get, why? Why are you still doing it? You're fine now. When I took my carb count down to 20 grams of carbs or less, that's processed and natural sugars, my sore hip went away in about a month and a half. And I didn't even notice. Pat came to me and said, "Hey, how's your hip doing?" And I didn't know what he was talking about. It was so far out of my head. Again, our mind and how it helps us to get away from hurtful, negative, painful information. So of course I understand when people ask me, why are you still doing keto if you feel so much better? I'm still doing keto for two reasons. When I took the carbohydrates out of my life because I was trying to solve my hip, I did have an idea that perhaps moving forward, this is the way that I'm going to have to eat, because when I eat too much sugar, I become inflamed. I had no idea if I would stay at 20 grams of carbs or less. But in my head, there's no way I was going back to 300. That's part one. But I totally believed that I would eat bread again. I would eat ice cream again. I would eat whatever again. That was my original thought 4 years ago. And then an interesting thing happened. I had some potatoes. I didn't have 400 grams worth of potatoes. I didn't even have 100 grams of potatoes. I had enough potato to bring me just past 20. And I woke up in the middle of the night in agony. And that was the first time in years that I had felt that kind of pain in my shoulder and knee joints. The intensity. So let's be clear about something. I had lived 20 years feeling that pain, but I gotten used to it. And now I had lived a month and a half, no pain. More than a month and a half, because this happened a bit later. No pain. And then all of a sudden, it was back. That was an ugly pain. That was a, I'm not doing that again pain. That was a, this is what that really felt like? No. Pain. Sticking to keto long term is based on the issue that you're trying to solve. And understanding that 20 grams of carbs or less is not a suggestion. It's a necessary action that we take to keep our body in a ketogenic state. Now, I understand that most of you don't have Violet syndrome, so you're not going to react with joint pain as soon as you eat more than 20 grams of carbs. But that's exactly what makes this so much more important for you to understand. If you allow yourself to eat extra carbohydrates, and you have no overt physical reaction, you're only going to know that you've been harming yourself when either A, you do gain weight, or worse, B, you have some other kind of physiological reaction. And the problem with that is, what if the issue that you have is a heart problem? What if the issue that you have is a liver problem? What if the issue that you have is that the nerve connections in your brain stop functioning properly? We can't see these things until they're having the problem, until they're affecting our life, until it's not working well anymore. If your goal is weight loss, when you lose the weight, it's very tempting to say, I don't have to do this anymore. I lost the weight. And you will resume harming your internals. And when you harm your internals, eventually, yes, that harm will be represented by weight. But by the time that happens, you could be in a much worse situation than just a weight problem. My commitment to eating 20 grams of carbs or less and my focus on solving a health problem go together, and they were the first two things that actually solidified that I ate on plan all the time. Because missing the carb count hurt my health. Not thinking about my health would make me miss the carb count. So they go together. I was focused on health. When we focus on weight, it's not the same. But the third piece of the puzzle, the thing that I did to make sure that I ate on plan and have eaten on plan for the last 4 years, was prioritize my health. So feeling physically and emotionally healthy over other people's opinions about what I was eating. And yes, people had lots of opinions about what I was eating. But when I woke up in the middle of the night and they weren't there, I was the one living that pain. I was the one who couldn't sleep. So their opinion did not matter to me. And anybody who walks up to me and says, I can't believe that you eat this way. How can you? I don't care, because you're not there when I'm hurting. And trust me, the people who are there when I'm hurting, they absolutely encourage me to eat this way, right? Pat didn't eat like me in the first 8 or 10 months, but he absolutely agreed with what I was doing. When he saw the results, my pain went away, and he saw what happened when I tried to eat a little bit of what they were eating. And he was the first one to say, don't do it. You don't need to. He was also the one who was annoyed with me when I would try things to see what would happen, because I wanted to know clearly what can be on my plate when I go out to eat. So I would try it at home, where I could eliminate other foods that I wasn't sure about, and I would take one food at a time and eat a certain amount and say, did it impact me, yes or no? And that helped me to understand that I don't do well with nightshades. Another piece of the puzzle that I wouldn't have known had I not allowed myself to pay attention. But I wouldn't have known if I hadn't taken the sugars out of my life, because sugars beat me up more than nightshades do. My honest examination of how foods were affecting me, so how they were impacting my health, my physical health. And by the way, when your physical health is down the tubes, your emotional health is down the tubes too. There was so many nights that I was so sad that we weren't skiing, that I was so sad that I couldn't even just go out for a walk with the rest of the family, that they're off doing whatever because they're going to go in the big deep snow, and I couldn't manage. I figured out what I could put on my plate that helped me to stay physically healthy, and that allowed me to quiet everybody else's opinion, because you don't know. Until you're living what I'm living, you don't know. So I don't care what you think about what I'm eating. And I'm encouraging you to have the same attitude. Let them question you. They're not the one suffering. You are. Commit to your health by watching this video right here that's about the benefits of keto. Wellness Warriors, I'm always so happy that you come back, and everybody who's new, welcome. Check out the description for other videos that can help you to improve your health and ways that you can support the channel. I can't wait to talk to you guys again next week.